Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's review, we are going to be returning to some more sour beers. Again, this is a hugely popular style. Really in the last few years it's been picking up steam. They've been around a long time, but it hasn't really mainstreamed, at least in the United States, until the last several years. Kind of blowing up rather like the IPAs did over the last several decades. IPAs certainly still, by a vast margin, the most popular craft beer style in America, but sours are definitely getting progressively more popular and more options are popping up, which as a craft beer lover of all styles is absolutely a good thing. So today we've got three from three different brewers, none of which I've ever had a beer from prior. So I expect these are all going to be quite interesting, and they all sound promising. We're going to be starting off with the Urban Artifact Gyroscope. This is a raspberry sour, the highest ABV of the bunch by a substantial margin. This one clocks in at 7.5% ABV, which is quite high for a sour. They are based out of Cincinnati, Ohio. Fun fact about this beer, in each batch that they brew, they use over 2,600 pounds of raspberries and also 30 grams of vanilla, which that doesn't sound like it a lot, but if you know anything about vanilla, it's very pungent. And it's quite light, but 30 grams is a boatload of vanilla to be adding into a beer. So I expect this is going to be really good. I can't wait to try it. Number two, this is a cool one. This is by a brewery. I may be butchering the pronunciation as I don't speak Swedish, but Dugges or Dugges. It is a Swedish brewer. They brewed this in collaboration with Stillwater Artisanal, I believe is also a Swedish brewer. This is called Tropic Punch Ale. It is a peach, mango, and passion fruit sour. This one clocks in at 4.5% ABV, and Dugges, if I'm saying that correctly, is based out of Landvetter, Sweden. Third and final beer today, this is ex Novo's Marryin Berries. That's Marryin as in marrying without the G. And this is a Marryin Berry and Raspberry Gose. 4.6% ABV on this one. They are based out of Portland. So all three completely different sours from completely opposite ends of the spectrum. You could argue that maybe there's some commonality here with the raspberry, but based on what they're doing with it, one's just a proper sour, one's a gose, so this ought to have a little bit of a briny back to it. It's also got Marryin Berry in it, which is going to add a totally different element. And then this has vanilla, much higher ABV. So I think all of these are going to be distinctly different and unique, and I can't wait. So I'm going to jump right in, starting with the Urban Artifact Gyroscope. This one clocks in at 7.5% ABV. All right, so jumping straight in with the Urban Artifact Gyroscope, the raspberry sour out of Cincinnati, Ohio, 7.5% ABV. Just a mound of raspberries in each batch, 2,600 pounds and 30 grams of vanilla. So I expect this is going to be quite an enjoyable beer. We are returning to the old Delirium goblet here. This is a great glass style for a sour. And on the can, it recommends that you gently turn this end over end in case there's any separation with the fruit. So I am doing so quite gently. I don't want to be stirring up for a raspberry explosion on set. All right, so I think that was gentle enough. That was end over end. I'm gonna crack it and be careful. I may have to grab this real quick. Let's go for it. Looks like I was plenty gentle. All right, let us get this poured into the glass. Oh, that is a stunningly beautiful beer. Oh, that is absolutely lovely. Absolutely lovely. I think I may be able to get the whole thing in here. Very gentle. Now, you will notice that this did actually form a head on here. I don't know if the camera can pick that up. it formed a light little purplish pink hued little creamy foam head on there, which I expect will dissipate quite quickly as it's a sour. It is exceedingly effervescent, and that is gorgeous. This is just a deep, deep ruby red, kind of reddish purple color. Pink hues, it's gorgeous. As you might expect, full of raspberry. Let's go ahead and give this a sniff. Oh, that smells amazing. Okay, this smells like any classic raspberry sour. Pick one, a framboise lambic. That's what this smells like to me. Though you can actually detect a little bit of that vanilla on the nose. It comes on the back. The sour in the raspberry is very pungent and upfront and in your face. But the vanilla does come through on the back end, and it smells quite nice. That head is almost completely gone now, as it should be on a sour. It's just got a little cling to the side of the glass and just the tightest little bit of cream floating on top. But overall, it did what it's supposed to do for the style. Let's jump in. One more sniff. God, this smells so good. I wish you could smell it. Such a pungent aroma too. Before I jump in, I cannot begin to tell you what a pungent aroma this has. It smells so fruity and fresh and tart and sour. I am looking forward to it. Let's do it. Oh yeah. Oh, that's so nice. Oh, that's so nice. Yeah, this is a really fine beer. Up front, nice big sour and tart comes through, and just a mouthful, an absolute mouthful of raspberry. Then you get a little bit of funk that comes through from the yeast. It settles out to this kind of earthy, funky blend of the tart and sour mixed with the raspberry, and it's really lovely. It's very well balanced. Now, truth be told, I'm not really picking up any of the vanilla in the flavor profile at all. You can get a little bit on the nose if you're really paying attention. But overwhelmingly, this is a raspberry sour that's got some funky undertones from the yeast. In fact, I'm going to see if they mention the yeast strain. This could have any number. It could have lactobacillus. It could have Brettanomyces. I mean, there's any number of yeast strains that would do this. It doesn't say. I could do a little research and post in the comments on this video later, but name of the game is, this is excellent. This is an excellent, excellent example of the style, and it's a beautifully balanced beer. And God, just look at it again. You can see it. I was pouring. This is just a gorgeous beer to behold. Now the head is kind of settled. The effervescence has calmed down a little bit. It's taken on just this deep purple color. I mean, it is just a beautiful beer. It absolutely is a beautiful beer. Let's give it another sip. The body is quite a bit heavier than the average sour, 7.5%. You might have anticipated that. The mouthfeel is classic sour. It's absolutely classic sour. It's super light, super effervescent, kind of borders a bit on creamy. The effervescence is so tight. The bubbles are so fine. It's got a dry finish, which is, you know, they're not all that way, but that is certainly one of the common characteristics of a sour. I wouldn't say it's brutish. It doesn't finish like a brute. At least it doesn't leave that impression, but it's got that dry finish. It's not viscous. It doesn't linger around the mouth and stay with this wet kind of sensation. It's a dry sensation on the finish. It's quite nice. It's very refined. The finish is quite long. It's certainly still going, and really what I'm tasting still is raspberry. And if I'm really, really honest, that vanilla I was missing on second example, it's on the very, very end of the finish. When everything else gets out of the way, after the dryness dissipates and there's just this lingering flavor, it's raspberry, probably 85, 90%, and just a hint of that vanilla at the back. It's very subtle, and it's very nice. I am a big fan of this beer. This is delicious. This is well done. I'm going to take my time finishing enjoying this one, come up with my scores, and then we will move on to number 2, Duchess. I'm guessing. I'll see if I can find how it's pronounced before I come back for the actual review of it. The collaborative brew with Stillwater Artisanal. It will be their Tropic Punch Ale, peach mango and passion fruit sour, 4.5% ABV out of Landvetter, Sweden. All right, so jumping straight into beer number 2. This is from Dugas, brewer out of Sweden. They are based in Landvetter, Sweden. This is a collaborative brew with Stillwater Artisanal. This one is their Tropic Punch Ale, peach, mango, and passion fruit sour, 4.5% ABV. So it's sitting right in the average range for a sour, but peach, mango, and passion fruit, that ought to make for a really interesting combination of flavors. Let's get this poured straight in the glass. All right. That's a very lovely looking sour. It looks like a classic sour color. It's very light yellow, almost hay or straw colored, true yellow. Yeah, that's lovely. It's not crystal clear. It's got a little bit of a haze to it, which is quite common for sours. Did form just the tiniest bit of a head. That's getting out of the way. It's very effervescent. It's just going to break away as it should. So far so good. Let's give it a sniff. That smells absolutely amazing. Wow. That is such a nice aroma. And I'll tell you, I don't really smell the sour. I just smell an overabundance of fruit. The peach is the strongest presence, and probably equal parts mango and passion fruit behind that. So 50, 25, 25. God, that just smells absolutely amazing. That is a very, very pronounced aroma indeed, and it is a very pleasurable aroma indeed. I'm not going to wait anymore. The bit of head that did form, it's just cycling now from the effervescence. It's out of the way. Let's get this done. Oh, man. Ho ho. Oh, wow. That is absolutely incredible. Oh, God. That is just incredible. That is one of the most fruit-forward sours I have ever had. It's almost like eating, I don't know, sour Starburst. It's that fruity. It is just bursting with tropical fruit. God, that is phenomenal beer. That is just phenomenal beer. Okay, tons of fruit up front. And then it does open up into a nice sour tartness, and it's in there. It's in there in full force. And it gets out of the way, and it's just this lovely fruit that mixes with this lingering just hint of sour and tartness, but it's fruit dominant. This is really, really good. People that like a very fruit forward flavored beer, or one that's not quite as sour but is more fruity, this one, if you can find it and get your hands on it, I recommend it. I got this from Tavour, as I did all of the beers in today's review. I'm not sure how readily available this would be outside of, luck of the draw with Tavour, but this is fantastic beer. I'm going to dive in for another sip. Really think about the body and mouthfeel here, finish, balance. Oh, God, it's so good. Oh, God, it's so good. Okay, so the body is very much in line with a 4.5% sour. It's exactly right. It's not too heavy, it's not too light, it's just right. The mouthfeel is very, very smooth. It doesn't have a lot of viscosity to it. It's very smooth. It's got a nice effervescence that adds just this subtle kind of creaminess to the overall mouthfeel. It doesn't finish as dry as the Urban Artifact Gyroscope did, but there is a hint of dryness on the back. It's still very much wet. and very much sticks around the mouth and gives that wet sensation. But at the very, very end, there's just this subtle, subtle hint of dryness that's quite nice for the finish. Overwhelmingly, this is just, this is a textbook example of what to do right with a sour beer. This is so freaking good. It's been a long time since I've had one quite to this level. This is excellent, excellent, excellent sour beer. The fruit are just beautiful. They are in such a meticulous balance, and it's got this nice long finish. I am still tasting all of this peach mango passion fruit. It's still lingering in there. I mean, it's present. This is just a fine, fine beer. I'm going to go through methodically and work up my rankings, and we'll come back for our third and final beer today, the Ex Novo's Marryin Berries, which is brewed with Marryin Berry and raspberry, and it's a gose. So I expect it'll have a little salty back. It should, a little brine. 4.6% on that one, and they are out of Portland, Oregon. All right, so jumping into our third and final beer of today's sour review, this is Ex Novo's Marryin Berries. It is a gose brewed with Marryin Berry and raspberries. 4.6% ABV out of Portland, Oregon. Pretty unique looking can art. I've never seen a can that looks quite like this. The interesting color scheme. It's clearly got Marryin Berries and raspberries, and they're giving each other the sweet eye there on the can. So let's get this cracked. Get this poured into the glass. Now, gose might have a little bit more pronounced head than another sour style. My God, this is an absolutely stunningly beautiful beer. This is a beautiful, beautiful beer. I think if I'm gentle, I can get this all in here. I'm trying not to bloom the head any further than it already is. All right. Okay, appearance-wise, I mean, this is just absolutely beautiful. It's this pink orange hue, deep, deep, deep pink orange hue. Very, very, very effervescent, as I would expect from really any sour, and gose as well. Let's give it a sniff. Okay, not the most pronounced aroma in the world. You can smell the sours and just a hint of berry, though it's hard to define if it's raspberry or Marryin Berry that I'm getting on the nose. I'm going to let the head settle just a bit more. It's almost already gone, so it's doing what it should do. Yeah, it's really more pungently sour than anything else, and you can smell the brine in there for sure. It's got some salt, as it should, as a gose. So let's just jump right in, see what we can pick out. Oh, that's a very, very nice beer. That's a very nice beer. That is a really, really good gose. Okay, so up front, you get this sweetness and tartness and sour tang that's all blending together. And you get this really nice burst of fruit. It opens into this beautiful classic gose briny quality. It's brewed classically and traditionally with salt water. Goses are named after the river style where they were brewed. It had a high saline content, and it imparted that into the final beer. That's why goses have this little salty back to them compared to other beer styles, and certainly compared to other sours. But this is a really great example. It's very delicately balanced. It's got the right body, right mouthfeel. Actually, the body's got a little more substance to it than you would expect on an average 4.6 ABV gose. It's very nice. Yeah, that beautiful tart, bright. It's very bright, very fruity. Opens up into that brine, and then it kind of separates back and finishes with a beautiful blend of both the sour tart accents and the Marryin Berry and the raspberry. I would say overall the Marryin Berry is a bit more present in this beer than the raspberry is. That's not a bad thing. It's underused fruit in my opinion. It's delicious. It's got a little more blackberry-like quality to it than raspberries, so they are quite a bit different. It's a little deeper, a little richer. Raspberries are a little brighter, a little tartar, but they pair so well together. It's such a beautiful beer, and it's so well balanced. It's just so well balanced. The finish does finish with a little bit of a classic gose kind of toast, bread crummy, a little bit of a dry finish. It's not overtly dry. Overall, I would say this is a robust, rather juicy gose, but the finish on it does finish very much classic gose. Those kind of toasted bread crummy kind of bread, baked good, biscuity qualities, as well as that brine on top, and a little bit of a dry finish. This is a really, really good example of a fruited gose. This is excellent beer. I am going to take my time and really enjoy this and really break down the categories, but I expect this to do quite well. This is really well done. That's just so nice. I tell you, there are just so many great brews coming out of Portland, Oregon. Anybody living up there in the Pacific Northwest, they're really kind of spoiled for choice. I'm fairly certain that Oregon, by volume, has the highest concentration of craft brewers in the country. I could be wrong. Portland probably as a city has the highest concentration. There are certainly other pockets. Tampa St. Pete has a massive craft beer scene where I live here. Certainly another craft brew mecca is the Asheville area of North Carolina and the Western Mountains there. Major pockets all over California, Texas, certainly New York has plenty of craft brew. The point here is craft brew is alive and well, and it doesn't appear to be slowing down or going anywhere. As more and more of it's coming out and more people are trying it and seeing what it's about, we're getting more converts. And you know, the reason is clear. Craft beer is superior in every conceivable way to large big box traditional American beer offerings. You know, there are plenty of large classic brewers that brew really great beer, but you know who I'm talking about. We're talking about the big 3 or 4, and this is a perfect case example of why people are turning to craft. None of the big brewers are doing anything remotely like this, not even on the same playing field. And you know, different strokes for different folks. I'm not judging, I'm not a snob, I'm just saying I for one fully understand why people turn to craft. So I'm going to enjoy this, work up my scores, and we'll come back and go through all 3 top to bottom. Okay, now that we have gotten to sample all 3 of these very good sours today, we're going to go through top to bottom, given their ratings, starting with the Urban Artifact Gyroscope. This is a raspberry tart sour, 7.5% ABV. They are out of Cincinnati, Ohio, and again, they brew with over 2,600 pounds of raspberries and 30 grams of vanilla per batch that they brew of this, which is just an absolute massive amount of raspberries, which certainly went into helping develop its color and its flavor profile. But top to bottom, the aroma on this, it was very aromatic. It was so pungent and present, you could smell it with barely even a hint of a whiff of a sniff. You could smell it, just raspberry and sour and tart galore. I give that a perfect 10 out of 10. For the taste, this was a really good raspberry sour. It put me in mind of a Belgian framboise, the raspberry lambic style. Not dissimilar. Really, the only thing that held me back giving this a perfect score was just I couldn't really pick up any of that vanilla that was in there. Maybe just the subtlest hint of vanilla. But the fact that they took the time to add it in there as part of the bill, I would have liked a little more presence from it. And I think the raspberry and the vanilla would have paired extremely well together, almost like a raspberry and cream kind of effect. But still, great score, 9 out of 10. The body on this was perfect for a sour, and it really had a nice bit of substance to it due to the higher ABV. It didn't overpoweringly make it heavy beyond the norms of the style, but it certainly made sure it had that presence that was right for it, and I gave that a perfect 10 out of 10. The mouthfeel on this, I also gave a perfect 10 out of 10. It was just textbook sour. Super bright, super effervescent. You could really feel it in there. It didn't have much viscosity, so to speak. It was just that really nice, light, bright effervescence that you get from sours that's so enjoyable. Textbook example. The finish on this. Finish on this was very nice, and it was very long. Really, the only thing that I'm going to come back to this vanilla that could have kicked it over to me to perfection was just if somewhere in the finish I could pick up beyond just the slightest nudge. It just needed a little more presence for me, but still 9 out of 10. This top tier. Head and retention on this was really, really good. It got out of the way very quickly. Took a little longer than the average, but I only docked at 1 point there. I gave it 9 out of 10. Heads, you don't really want on a sour. It's not appropriate for the style. Just let it settle, get out of the way. The appearance on this was an absolutely gorgeous beer. As you could see as I was pouring it, just this deep, deep, deep ruby red. It was beautiful. 10 out of 10. The balance on this, it was very well balanced. Between the fruit and the sour, I could have used even a little more raspberry presence. And again, I come back, just more vanilla would have done it for me, but still well above average, 8 out of 10. Feeling in the intangible, absolutely love this beer. I thought this was a really, really nice raspberry sour, and to say that it put me in mind of a framboise lambic is the highest of praise. That, for my money, is the pinnacle of what a raspberry can and should be, and this was very, very close to meeting that that bar. I give it an 8 out of 10. Finally, as an example of the style, being that it's not a lambic, they get a bit more leeway here, and indeed this was a superior example of the style. Only again, the caveat, the vanilla, a little more presence and even a little more raspberry across the flavor profile, but I still gave it a 9. Very high score. That brings the total on Urban Artifacts Gyroscope to a 92 out of 100. This is excellent, excellent beer. I could recommend this to any fan of sours and any fan of sour raspberry beers in particular. It was excellent. Moving on to number 2. The one foreign beer in the lineup. This is Duges's Brewing's collaboration they did with a brewer from Stillwater Artisanal Ales. This is their Tropic Punch Ale, which was peach, mango, and passion fruit sour. 4.5% ABV, so really sitting right in the average range for an average sour. They are out of Landvetter, Sweden. The aroma on this, I could not believe how pungent this was. If this was a perfect 10, honestly, if my scale went higher, this would be higher. It was so incredibly aromatic and just smelled amazing. I mean, you just got near the glass and just peach, mango, passion fruit. It was incredible. Perfect 10 out of 10. For the taste, I absolutely love this. It was so delicate and so well balanced, and the fruit came through so strongly and in perfect unison and balance with the sours. This was just such a well done beer. The only thing that kept me from giving this perfection was I would have liked just a little more passion fruit and a little more mango to come through in the flavor. The peach was very, very, very dominant, and that's not a bad thing. It was absolutely delicious, but I would have liked a little more mango, a little more passion fruit. Nonetheless, taste 9 out of 10. The body on this was really nice for a sour. It wasn't quite substantive as the Urban Artifact, as you might expect. It's got roughly half the ABV, but it was still a really nice body for a sour. It was just a little lighter than your average sour, but still I gave it a 9 out of 10. Moving to the mouthfeel, however, this was textbook perfection for a sour. It was so light and bright and effervescent. It's exactly what you want. 10 out of 10. The finish on this was a very, very, very long finish indeed, and it was just so pleasurable. The entire length, which was, it just kept going and going and going. Just sour tart fruit, sour tart fruit, sour tart fruit medley, and just kept going and going and going. I gave it a perfect 10 out of 10. The head of the retention, for the exact same reason as the Gyroscope, I gave it a 9. It did form one, but it very quickly got out of the way and settled and let you jump straight in. That's what you want in the sour. 9 out of 10. The appearance, this was another absolutely gorgeous beer. It had this kind of pinkish orangey hue to it that was just beautiful in the glass, which obviously gets imparted from the fruit. And you know, fruited beers and fruited sours, they tend to have that going for them. They are absolutely beautiful beers to look at in the glass. Really gets your appetite going. Perfect 10 out of 10. Balance on this, I only docked 1 point, so I give it a 9. And again, it's for the same reason, just a little more mango and passion fruit. To balance with that peach, I would have given it a 10, but a 9 out of 10, fantastic score. Feeling in the intangible, I absolutely loved it. I'm nitpicking here, but I have to be critical when I'm going through my rankings and be perfectly honest with, you know, not letting my subjective outside of feeling and intangible. I get some leeway here, but even that, I still gave it a 10. I absolutely loved it. Moving on to an example of the style, this was a really, really, really fantastic sour. I absolutely enjoyed it. The only point I docked again, Tropic Punch Ale, being a blend of fruit, peach, mango, passion fruit, the peach was just overpowering to the other fruit that were in there. But the beer was of such a superior quality, you know, it honestly almost didn't matter, but I got to be honest and got to allocate the points based on what I experienced. I give it a 9. That brings the total score on the Dugis Tropic Punch Ale to a 95 out of 100. Ridiculously high score. This is getting up in the top 10 beers I think I've reviewed to date out of well over 100 now. Moving on to our third and final beer. This is Novo's Marryin Berries, the Marryin and Raspberry Gose. Marryin Berry and Raspberry Gose, 4.6% ABV out of Portland, Oregon. A lot of great beer coming out of Portland, Oregon, it seems. And this was just another case. Just point to it. For the aroma, this was one category on this beer that was definitely lower than the others. You could smell it, but you really had to breathe quite deeply to get much, and it was a little indiscernible what you were going to get. I did give it on the higher end of average just because it did make its presence known, but I would have liked a little more pungency and be able to kind of pick apart the individual berries on the back of the sour and the brine. I gave it a 6. The taste, this was a really, really nice, well done Gose. I really enjoyed it. The Marryin Berry came through far more strongly than the raspberry in this, which, you know, it's an underused berry. It's very nice. It's not dissimilar to a blackberry in a lot of ways, and it pairs well and goes nicely in beer, and it adds another depth of color that's really lovely to beers. But the taste, I really enjoyed it. I only knocked it just because I would have liked a little more raspberry to come through in here, and still, great score, 8 out of 10 for me. The body on this was textbook Gose body. The briny nature of it always gives a little more weight that kind of surprises you, you know, if you're not thinking about it, based on their average ABVs, and this is squarely in the average range. It gives a little more substance, and this was no exception. Body gets a 10 out of 10. The mouthfeel, again, classic Gose. I had to give it a 10 out of 10. The finish. This was a nice finish. It didn't last as long as I would have liked, but it did have all the telltale classic characteristics of a Gose. I got to enjoy the fruit blend that they put in there, and it lasted for a reasonably long time, certainly longer than average, and it finished with this nice kind of classic breadcrumb toast kind of biscuity quality that you get in a Gose, and did have a little bit of that classic dry finish. If it had a little bit longer length on the finish and had just a little bit of that dryness in a higher volume than it did, I would have given it higher, but as it were, still great score again, 8 out of 10. The head and retention, just like the prior two, it really wanted to form a head to begin, but it settled very quickly, got out of the way. I only docked at 1 point, I gave it a 9. Appearance, this was just another absolutely lovely beer. I mean, a beer photographer's dream, all three of these. I gave it a 10 out of 10 for the appearance. The balance, as I stated prior, it's certainly above average and deserving of being put in this category, but I would have liked more raspberry to come through in here. It really was Marryin Berry forward, which is not a bad thing. It's a delicious berry, but I would have liked an equal balance of Marryin Berry and raspberry so they could have had a little flavor interplay with one another much more than they did. The raspberry was really hard to detect, but still above average. I gave it a 7 for the balance. Moving on to my feeling and intangible, I really love this beer. Goses are one of my favorite sour styles, and this was a really, really nice example of a gose. I enjoyed the fruit that they put in there, and Marryin Berry. More people should brew with that. It's an underused fruit, in my opinion, and it pairs so well, particularly in a sour beer base. I give it a 9 out of 10. I loved it. Finally, as an example of this style, another great example of a gose. And again, I'm really only docking points from a couple different areas. The slight deviation in balance between Marryin Berry and raspberry, and the slight bit that I was missing on the end of the finish. I mean, I'm really nitpicking again, but this is still, again, a well above average for the style. It just is. I gave it an 8 out of 10. That brings the total score on Novo's Marryin Berries to an 85 out of 100. So it seems like a big point spread here when we're talking 85, 95, a 10 point, between the three. But let's be real here. All three of these beers are absolutely top tier, superior examples of what they brewed. These are very, very high scores. I would recommend any of the three of these beers all day long to anybody that enjoys beers like this, or maybe has never tried any, like give them a first taste of what there is in this style. I think all three of these would be absolute perfect picks. I loved the lot of them. This was a really, really good review for me. I thoroughly enjoyed it. On the heels of a disappointing prior episode, this was exactly what I needed. I really loved it. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, thank you so much for tuning in today. Please consider liking and subscribing. I know you hear it a lot, but it really does help our channel and it helps others find our content. If you want to get notified when our videos go live, you can click the notification bell. That will let you know right when the videos go live on YouTube. And finally, as we're growing our channel, if you are one of the many viewers that have come through my channel, we would like to hear from you. Certainly, we want to get some conversations going about craft beer, and I don't have but my own comment on a video where I was just making a comment about something I had to do on it. Yeah, please consider, along with liking and subscribing and sending this to other fellow beer lovers, we want to hear your comments. We want to know what you think. What do you think about the content? What do you like? What do you dislike? What ideas do you have? What would you like to see? Please let us know. We are actively working on this, not for our own benefit, but for yours as well. And we will take your input into consideration. But until next time, folks, keep it beer, keep it craft. Cheers.